We've all been there. You have the facts. You have the logic. You are 100% right. But the more you prove it, the more the other person digs their heels in. In psychology, we call this the backfire effect. It's that frustrating moment where evidence doesn't just fail, it actually makes your opponent more certain of their own delusions. It turns out, logic is a terrible tool for changing minds. Logic is an attack. And when humans feel attacked, they don't think, they survive. 2,400 years ago, a man in Athens figured out the antidote. Socrates didn't have a PhD in psychology or a YouTube channel. He was just a guy in a tunic who never wrote a single word down. He never gave a lecture. He never told anyone they were wrong. Yet, Socrates was so effective at dismantling egos that the state eventually decided he was too dangerous to keep alive. This is the Socratic Secret. It's not about how to win an argument. It's about how to help someone else realize they've already lost it, without you ever raising your voice. The story begins with a paradox that changed the course of Western thought. The Oracle of Delphi declared Socrates the wisest man in the world. But Socrates had a problem with that. He didn't think he was wise. In fact, he claimed he didn't know anything at all. To prove the oracle wrong, Socrates went on a mission. He visited the experts of Athens. He talked to the politicians who claimed to know justice. He talked to the poets who claimed to know beauty. He talked to the soldiers who claimed to know courage. But Socrates didn't walk up to them and say, "You're wrong." That would have been too easy. Instead, he walked up and said, "I am ignorant. Could you please explain to me what courage is?" One by one, the experts' solid knowledge began to dissolve. They realized their definitions were built on sand. Socrates realized the oracle was right. He was the wisest because he was the only one who didn't have the ego to pretend he knew what he didn't know. This is Socratic ignorance, and it is the most powerful psychological state you can enter. So, how do you actually take this ancient, dusty tool and use it in a modern argument? Whether it's a toxic political debate on social media, a high-stakes disagreement with your boss, or a recurring fight with a partner, the process, the Elenchus, remains the same. But to use it, you have to undergo a psychological death. You have to shift from a warrior mindset, where you are hunting for a kill, to a Socratic midwife mindset, where you are simply helping someone give birth to their own realization. First, assume the student role. I won't lie to you, this is the hardest part. Every instinct in your body is going to scream at you to interrupt, to correct, and to win. You have to take your own rightness, put it in a heavy box, and bury it for a moment. If you enter a conversation trying to prove you're right, you have already lost the chance to change a mind. Why? Because the moment you push, they push back. Instead, your goal is to become their biographer. You aren't their opponent. You are a curious explorer trying to map the strange, twisted territory of their internal logic. You have to genuinely want to know, how did they get here? Second, define the foundation. This is where most modern discourse falls apart. We spend hours shouting at each other because we're using the same words to mean completely different things. Socrates knew that if the foundation is cracked, the house will never stand. If someone tells you, "This project is a complete waste of time," don't jump to defend your work. That's the warrior speaking. Follow Socrates into the foundation instead. Ask, "I want to understand your perspective. How are we defining value here? Are we talking about immediate revenue, long-term brand equity, or the personal growth of the team?" You aren't arguing, you're digging. You're forcing them to look at the blocks they used to build their opinion, blocks they likely haven't inspected in years. Third, the logical titan. This is where the sting happens. Once they have given you their definition, you don't fight it, you embrace it. You follow their logic like a trail of breadcrumbs to its absolute, natural conclusion. If they insist that we should only invest resources into things that generate direct profit, you don't tell them they're heartless. You simply ask, following that logic, does that mean we should stop investing time in our children or our health, since neither generates a quarterly revenue stream? Don't say, aha, gotcha. That is the ego's victory, but the argument's death. The second you gloat, you trigger the backfire effect, and the door to their mind slams shut. Instead, just stay in character. Stay genuinely curious. Let the silence do the heavy lifting. You have to let them be the ones to hit the wall of their own logic. Here's the secret that Socrates understood better than anyone. People don't change their minds because of your facts. They change their minds when they feel like they were the ones who discovered a new truth. Socrates famously called himself a midwife. He didn't claim to give birth to the truth himself. He believed his only job was to help others go through the messy, often painful process of delivering it from within themselves. When you ask a Socratic question, you aren't launching a missile at someone's ego. You are extending a hand. You are inviting them to be a co-investigator in a mystery that neither of you fully understands yet. You are saying, let's find the truth together, instead of, here is my truth, now eat it. But I have to give you a warning. This path isn't easy, and it isn't always safe. Socrates was eventually sentenced to death by a jury of his own peers, the very people he was trying to help. They called him a gadfly, a persistent, biting insect that exists only to sting a large, lazy horse into moving. The horse was Athens, and the sting was his questions. People don't always like having their foundations shaken. Most people would rather live in a comfortable lie than a difficult truth. Being a Socratic gadfly means you're going to be annoying. You're going to sting people out of their comfort zones, and sometimes they will swat back. But in a world of mindless shouting, where everyone is a warrior desperate to defend their own tiny hill of opinion, being the person who has the courage to ask why is the ultimate power move. The next time you're about to jump into a heated debate, stop, take a breath, channel that blue ink energy. Remind yourself that the loudest person in the room is rarely the wisest. Don't be the person with the answers, be the person with the questions. Because as Socrates famously said at his trial, the unexamined life is not worth living. But in the modern world, the unexamined argument is just a waste of your breath. Stay curious.